Well, hello everybody. Hope you're all doing fantastically well. It is Conor here in kind of unfamiliar surroundings again. So apologies for that. I'm having to do it from York HQ. So not in Manchester, not on the dark side of the Pennines, but it's Friday. We're all having a bit of a chiller, aren't we? England are on later. We don't really fancy watching all that stuff, so we're going to be talking about Leeds today. Make sure you check out the videos from the past couple of days as well, everybody. Very, very enjoyable, but you are scratching for a little bit of content, aren't you? And my guest right now is someone who I massively respect in the space, someone who we've not really done anything together before, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome him onto One Leeds. For the first time, it is the biggest Leeds United fan channel in the space, hitting 60,000 subscribers. Unbelievable. It is the absolutely notorious, as always. Of course, it's Lynch from the Leeds United View. How are you doing, my friend? All good?
Yeah, I'm not bad. What an intro. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that, mate. Yeah, all good. All good. Friday, wrapping up the week. Looking forward to it. A nice, relaxing weekend with no Leeds United to ruin my weekend for me.
Yeah, man, you like your WWE, and that's an intro for you.
There you go.
But yeah, mate, it's good to eventually have you on. And like I said, there's a lot of people and it's interesting, we were just talking a little bit off air, and, a lot of people asking, why haven't you done stuff before? And it's just one of those things, isn't it, Joe? You kind of move in your own space and you're doing your own little bits, and you kind of get into it, don't you? Obviously, for your love and the passion of this football club. And like you say, they ruin your weekends every weekend. You're trying to curtail lives and videos towards Leeds, and you kind of forget sometimes about all the outside stuff, don't you?
Sometimes you spend so long talking about Leeds that you just want to stop talking about Leeds for a little bit when it's 7 days a week, or we've got 3 games in a week and you've got a transfer window and everything else. You're just like, you know what? Might be nice to have just a weekend where I don't have to worry about checking my score on my phone if I'm out, or sitting down and watch a game and trying not to look as stressed as I tend to normally look when I'm watching a Leeds match. But yeah, and as you say, everyone kind of works in their own space. Everyone's doing their own thing. Everyone's, I say Baskin Robbins is a flavour for everybody out there when it comes to Leeds content. So yeah.
There you go. 2 of Ireland's finest. Don't worry, I'm not one of those. I was in when I went over to Ireland, I was speaking to Jer quite a bit, and when we went to Galway, which was a good recommendation by yourself. We went into like a couple of lovely little pubs, me and my girlfriend, and I will never say I'm Irish because I am English, but my mother is Irish, but I'll never say I'm Irish. Now, you're in bars in Galway and all you ever hear is Americans from like St. Louis and wherever they are, like Massachusetts, going, I'm Irish. And I'm like, you're not Irish. And I was speaking to a couple of Irish people over there that said it really annoys them. Do you know what I mean? You're American is secondary, you're Irish, and it's a big thing. So I won't be doing that, Joe, don't worry.
Well, unless you're a half decent footballer and you want to play in a World Cup, then you're Irish. Then we'll take whatever we can get. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Evening, lads. Loving this collab. Yeah, it's been long overdue, mate. There's loads of people in the building as well. Make sure you're checking out Jer, of course, everyone, which I'm sure you are, and only Leeds bros in here as well. Well, I'll tell you what, mate. Let's start on the season so far. Really, it's been an interesting one. Is it a success for you so far? What's happening with Leeds United, or are you just going to make that judgment, I guess, at the end of the season?
Be careful what you say at this point. It'll be clipped up and used against you in a court of law at some point in the future. I find it hard to argue with what the goal is. The goal is to get promoted out of this division. That's the goal. How you get there, I genuinely don't really care. I'm just sick of the Championship and I want to get out of this league, and I don't care if we do it playing the most expansive, exciting football in the world, or we limp over the line and get up. The goal is get out of the league. Right now, as things stand, and I will caveat this before it gets used against me in future, at the 38 game mark of the season, Leeds are still the best side in this division. They're top of the table, whether it's goal difference or not. Leeds are in the number 1 spot. So as far as, is it a success in terms of league position right now? Yeah, I think it is a success. And I think we're exactly where we need to be at this point. I know we're all a little bit nervous and edgy, the fact that we've had a gap twice, we've lost it twice. But isn't that the whole point of having a gap? That you're going to have these blips and these wobbles at some point of a season, and your gap is there to make sure you've got that breathing room to have that wobble and still maintain your spot at the top. It'll depend on how we come out of this is the big one, and what the next 8 games bring will be ultimately how we determine whether the season's a success or not. But for right now, I think if you'd been asked at the start of the season, would you take Leeds top of the table after 38 games? You'd be like, yeah, absolutely. Put your hand off.
Yeah, I
What
think
do you
that's good.
think?
Yeah, I think it's good perspective, mate. I think, when you take a little bit of a step back and you take away the
Emotion.
take away the emotion. I think Graham Smith quite rightly said it's not a blip. This is a little bit of a wobble, which I guess it has been. You're 5 points in 4 games, but if your seasonal average is so high, it's normally sort of 10, 12 out of 12, isn't it? Not normally sort of 5 out of 12 points. So I think it's a success right now. I really do. And I guess the overarching question consistently for me is, should we be further ahead? Should there be decisions maybe from the manager of which would have put us further ahead? But, we also are at a point right now where Daniel Farke has led us to this point as well by making certain decisions. I think we're at a decent point right now. Joe, I'm going to ask you this pretty directly, mate. Did the international break come at a good point for Leeds United?
Yeah, it did. There's a very direct answer as well. Yeah, 100% it did. I think this is the international break I've been waffling on all season that I'm worried about, because this is the international break that in the relegation season damaged us, last season damaged us. And this is the one that I constantly say is the most unnecessary time for FIFA to put an international break in the calendar, when you've got clubs all over the world competing for titles, promotion, money that's related to finishing in certain positions in the league, relegation. And then they go and stick an international friendly, and a junior Firpo heads off to play 2 friendlies against Puerto Rico, the same side twice. Does he really need to go and play those games? Is that really an important thing that you need to be doing right now? That's always been in the back of my head, and I worry about that this international break. But given Leeds' run coming into this, 1 win in 4 games coming into it, yeah, it's probably come at exactly the right time. And I think also from the opposition perspective, it might just curtail Burnley's momentum a little bit, because of the 2 sides behind us. They're the ones that are the form side that could nip past both of us and hit the top spot. So it could be perfect. It could be the perfect timing. But again, we're only saying that at this point, with the evidence we've got in front of us, that could change very quickly. We could lose to Swansea and it could be a disaster of an international break. Half the lads could come back. Tanaka could come back ruined. Hopefully he doesn't, touch wood, he won't. But, you've said that in the back of your head and you're worried about it. So, but yeah, I think just from a form perspective, of the 3 teams chasing the automatic 2 spots, we're in the worst form of the 3 of them right now over the last 5. So I think, probably has come at a good spot to regroup, just have a little look. Players like Brendan Aronson as well, just give them a chance to have a break and a rest, and just put them on the bubble bath for 2 weeks and don't let them do anything else. I think that would be agreeable for everybody.
Yeah, it's funny, Jay. My old man, and he's in the next room here, and he'll be cringing at me saying this online, but he's been very much, don't worry, son, don't worry. We're going to get the top 2, 100%, 100%. We had the wobble, and then suddenly he's saying to me last night, he's having a glass of wine and saying, son, it's 3rd place for Leeds. I'm sorry, it's 3rd place. I can't get round it. And I'm like, it's just the Leeds, it's the Leeds, it's the devil and the angel, isn't it? Inside all of us as fans, it is. And it's funny. I was doing something with a couple of other fans the other day, Joe, and they are really calm, but they know Leeds are the best side of the 3. They admit Leeds are the best side of the 3, but they're relying heavily on the intangibles, the mental strain. And it's so interesting, the psychology, isn't it, behind Leeds United in the final furlong. And I'm just hoping this time there's a little bit more mental fortitude, there's experience, there is, an abundance of quality in that squad as well right now, who you're hoping can override that pressure, which, will start to amp up.
Yeah.
Do you think it's different, Jer, to last season?
Yeah, I think there's I've been saying this for a few weeks, but I think it's a different perspective on where you are in the league. Leeds need to hold their nerve more than anything else. That's the most important thing, is to just stay calm, believe in yourself, keep doing what you've been doing. That's got you to the dance in the first place, and push forward. But I still think this side is good enough to go up automatically. I think we've got all the tools that we need there, whether we use them correctly between now and the end of the season. I think Daniel Farke has probably started to move back towards some of his sticking points of last season, where it's, well, this is the 11 I'm going to go with now. And you're like, yeah, you've got a really good bench this year. Last year, I could understand that the bench wasn't great. This year, I think Ramazani and Gnonto have bigger parts to play. I think you've got good options. You can rotate players around a bit more than you need to. But it's very much, as you say, it's in the final sprint now. It's all about holding your nerve. Other teams and everyone else is saying Leeds are the best side in the league. Everyone is saying that, except for Leeds fans, who are saying, we're doing it again. It's happening again. Here we go. at some point it has to be our turn to not do it. And I think I'm hoping and I'm living on the point of this is a blip, we'll be fine coming out of this. This is our season. Like, don't worry about it. But I think if you look at Sheffield United and Burnley, they have some really tricky games coming up as well. So their fan base isn't going to be chilled when they have to face each other. Someone's dropping points in that game, or both of them are. So there's that. They both have Coventry City to play as well, who are on an incredible run of form. Their only defeat in the last 5 or 6 games was Leeds. So there's pressure there as well. And I think to answer your question the long way around, last season Leeds were chasing. So you always knew what you needed. And you're always going into every week knowing what you needed to get in order to get closer to the team at top. This year you're being chased. This is all about your nerve. This is all about holding your head, keeping calm. And it's a different kind of pressure. Daniel Farke needs to motivate these players differently than he did last year. Like the comment around Tanaka needs to score more goals, Piru needs to score 20. There's a very clear change in approach from Farke and what he was saying. He was very protective of Demir Leon. Now he's like, no, I want more. He has to do something different to motivate these players. I think that's what he's trying to do, is put personal goals on to say, if we're going to get promoted, you need to do this. If we're going to get promoted, you need to do this. So it's a very different pressure for all of them, including, well, Farke could be more used to it, but for the rest of the squad, this is a very different set of pressures.
Yeah, and I guess it comes back to the thing that we're talking about, Joe, at the start when it comes to the job he's done so far. Yeah. I think you are bang on in terms of his... Look, I think as a fan base, this isn't insulting the guy. He's extremely stubborn, and I'm sure he'd admit that himself. Yeah. And as a manager, I think you've got to be stubborn. You've been a coach before, Joe. I've done bits as well. You kind of have to be stubborn, don't you? In your decisions, you have to be confident, especially at the level he's at. I do think rotation is absolutely key right now. You are right. It felt like at this point, toward the back end of last season, maybe there was a few problems when it came to rotation. But once again, like you've said, Joe, were there options there? I'm not sure they were. It was very much crisis Somerville FC. At this point, Rutter had picked up a hernia. And I wonder this season, though, with the likes of Ramazani, with the likes of Gnonto, with Rothwell, in and out. I look at those 3 players in particular, Joe, and I think they're getting any team in the division. And I genuinely and passionately believe that. So right now it's interesting, isn't it? Because he clearly fully believes in Solomon, clearly fully believes in Dan James. Obviously, James looking a little bit knackered at the minute. I guess the big one is the lad in the middle, isn't it? Yeah. Brendan Aronson, because it feels like to put Willie Gnonto in, what he was suggesting in his post-match press conference was that he needs a defensive body in that double pivot. Now that defensive body right now with obviously match fitness comes in Alai Gruev. How do you feel about that, Joe? How are you feeling about just the central attacking midfield and the double pivot sort of relationship, and how Daniel Farke will maybe have to change that up?
I have a funny feeling we get on to talking about Ilya Gruev somehow coming into this. I thought this is definitely got to be a talking point at some point. And I'd love to get your take on it as well, and what you think about that midfield position as well. But I agree on the Brendan Aronson thing. I do think Brendan Aronson's contributed this year. I think he's gone through a tricky spell in the last 12 or 13 games, but he's been millimeters away from having extra goals in his, well, specifically assists on his CV this year. The goal Piru scored for me the other week was a fantastic goal. He's involved in that and gets ruled out, unfairly gets ruled out for offside, but that then breaks that. Well, he hasn't done that in 12 games. That goes away then with that 1 assist, so but I do think he's been flogged. I think I was saying this to Alex in American Leeds last night. I wrote this down so I could keep it. Yeah, last year in the Bundesliga, Brendan Aronson played 1,280 minutes. He averaged 43 minutes a game. So far this season, he's played 2,974 minutes, which is more than double, and he's averaging 78 minutes per game. So if you go back to his first season at Leeds in the Premier League, the year we went down, he started the season really well. Jurgen Klopp was coming out talking about how good a player he was and potentially Liverpool looking at bringing him in. And then the second half of the season, it just fell off a cliff along with the rest of the team. But he was flogged that year. He played every single available minute they could get him on the pitch for. They pushed him and they kept him on the park, even when he didn't need to be there. I think Farke has done something similar this year. I think he's played him in a huge amount of minutes where he's not always needed to be there in the 78, 80th, 90th minute. He could be off the park getting a bit of a rest. And I think that's contributed to the legs getting heavy. He looks like he's got heavy legs. He looks like he needs a rest. This international break and not being called up may be perfect for him. The question whether he's the long-term future for the number 9, I think we need somebody more creative, but I think there is some merits to what Brendan brings to the team, what he does off the ball as well specifically. But I think it needs to be looked at this point of the season. He can go with what he knows and hope that Brendan finds his form, or he can freshen it up. And he can put Willie in there, who I believe has the skill set to be a good number 10. We bought him as a central player. He was bought from Zurich as a 9, not as a winger. So he's bought as a central player. He's a low centre of gravity. He's got good feet. He can shoot with both feet. He's accurate.
Jay, you're speaking my language, mate. We'll have you on again.
But I think that's the stuff you need to look at when you're talking about that position. And I think it's very easy to say, well, a winger can play number 10. Well, that's not necessarily. Anyway, a centre back can play number 10, but can he play well as a number 10? That's the question. But I think you've got to look at that. I think he needs to look at it even just from it. And I said this during the week, but from a perspective of changing what the opposition manager is going to do, because right now I can pick Daniel Farke's 11 next week. A good idea what that 11 is going to be, which means I can set my style out to stop them because I know what they're going to do. I know how they're going to play. You take Aronson out and put Gnonto in there, and all of a sudden that changes that. Well, now I'm not 100% sure because he won't press the same way Aronson presses. He won't stay central. He'll try and go out wide and link up play with the wingers. That changes how Leeds play. So I think there's an element of that. The Dan James and Solomon one. Dan James, I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, a sneaky little change that's happened with opposition managers. They're man marking him. So what you'll notice, especially against Millwall, Joe Bryan didn't cross the halfway line once. He didn't leave Dan James' side. So all of a sudden, Dan James isn't an option to get the ball anymore because every time we look up to pass the ball to him, he's got a man standing right beside him.
Yeah.
So that's been Leeds need to find a solution to get Dan James into the game because he's important to us. But yeah, I think you need to change it up. I'm okay with the midfield options. I think I would still go with Gruev in the away games for that defensive stability in there and bring Rothwell on the 70-minute change it. But I would go with Joe Rothwell in the home games for that more attacking threat because outside of a couple of games, I think when Gruev has been in the midfield, we've been better away from home defensively. We've conceded less goals in general, not in every game, but in general, away from home when he's been there. But you lose something going forward, and that it depends on what you want from that game. So I think at the moment he's got two good options in there. They're not the same player. They don't have the same attributes. They're very different midfielders. A bit unfair to judge them off the same set of metrics, but I think that they've both got a place to play. And Leeds have a really good, I suppose, how would you put this? It's a good problem in as far as they've got two players who can do two different jobs in that midfield if they need it. And I think that's what's important. But I have a good idea what your thoughts are on the centre of midfield, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about the rotation as well of Gnonto.
Yeah, Joe, if you've caught anything I've done for about 12 months now, I've just been absolutely unequivocally certain. I saw him play against Sheffield Wednesday away from home, just pretty much in that number 10. And I absolutely loved this performance. And there was the rhetoric after that wingers can't play in the number 10. I couldn't disagree with that more, Joe, to be honest with you. I think
in general, though, it's a very general statement.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's too, you are right. It's a perfect way of putting it. It's too generalized. And I think there is similar attributes for many of them. You know, you look at Solomon, I think he's quite Pabloistic, as someone put it to me not long ago, in terms of his tendencies in the round, sort of that number 10 position as well. And like you've quite rightly said, not every single player can play in that number 10, but we have options there. And I think that's why I'm looking at the manager now. Gruev, look, I played there myself for a number of years. Nowhere near at that level, and I know you played at an extremely good level as well, Joe, probably better than I did. But there's just certain things I look at him as a midfielder and I think maybe hides a little bit, and that's been very, very critical. But I think when he's pressed a little bit against good midfields, I think he struggles a little bit to get on the ball. And I think there's a certain way Gruev plays, which I think limits Leeds a little bit. I kind of would like to see Rothwell in there with Gnonto in a central space, because I actually think Rothwell would unlock more space for Gnonto as well, in terms of just driving into that half space and leaving a bit of room for Gnonto to do a little bit of damage. And I do wonder sometimes as well, Joe, if it's that old adage from the Bielsa years of, you know, attack is the best form of defence for this Leeds United side, because we've got so many weapons going forward, Joe. And sometimes I look at it maybe and think, are we properly utilising that? You know, is Ramazani getting, when he's got 731 minutes in the last 20 odd games, is that really utilising his talent? Look, the argument back to that is Dan James and Solomon have been outstanding, quite rightly so. 100%. There's always a counterpoint to that. But what I would say, mate, is when you've got those two on the bench, you just simply have to utilise them. And you know, you make a real good point in terms of Gruev been in there in the away games. Yeah. What I would say is, you know, there's been a lot of people, Joe, who've maybe referenced the Coventry game and the Watford game. And I've mentioned this a little bit earlier on. I thought a lot of that, Joe, was them playing a high line and our centre-backs playing the ball over the top into the flanks. That's what I thought a lot of that was. I think those two games in particular maybe passed the midfield by. And that's, maybe that's just been a little bit hyper analytic, but
no, I don't think so, because I think
yeah.
the game state is important when you're looking at that. I mean, what's the job? And that's the key part of it. I hate to go all Roy Keane on things, but what's the job? Like, I mean, Gruev is in there for one reason: stop them playing through the middle of the park. And if the ball isn't going through the middle of the park, he's doing his job. That's why he's in there. That's his job. His job is to link the play in the back area, keep it simple, move it out. If they are playing a high line and they're pressing us high, absolutely bypass that, because you've got Solomon and Dan James who can run into space all day long. So you absolutely take advantage of that situation. Your midfield goes out of the game, then that's a byproduct of that. But that's, again, the game state, and you can pick any one game and say, well, that's the examples. Like, well, that's one game. Like, in the entire context of all of the games, what's the answer at that point? But you've got to find different ways of playing, and that's been the biggest criticism I had of Farke the first half of the season, is you've got to find a way to win games. I don't care how you do it, but you got to find a way to win them. You're the best team in the league, you got to do that. And I think in those particular kind of games, it was like, right, okay, there's an opportunity here to change how we play. Might not be what we normally do, might be more direct, but if the space is there, you've got the ability and you've got the players who can play into that space, take it, absolutely. Does your midfield do something? Absolutely it does.
So, when you mentioned there, game states, you always have to take this into account, because I think sometimes we all, like you've just mentioned previously, like, generalize things. And for instance, attack is the best form of defense. Stick Rothwell in, and Rothwell, Tanaka, and Gnonto just ahead. But in certain games, Rothwell might not be on it. Tanaka might not be on it. And that defense, there might be a defensive lapse immediately. A team might score within the first 10 to 15 minutes. It is like you said, and that's the tough job, isn't it, Jer, of a coach and a manager, and that's why they paid the big bucks.
Exactly. He said it himself. I mean, the QPR is the exact example of that. And I was one of them as well. Rothwell has to play every game for the rest of the season, and then the first away game he plays.
He was excellent in that. It was at the Millwall game. He was superb.
It's what he does in terms of tempo. Like, he gets Leeds ticking. If it's slow and a bit pedestrian, give him the ball, he'll find 10 yards of space and sprint into it, and that just lifts everybody. But in the QPR game away from home, I missed the game because I was out with my partner up at Game of Thrones thing, and I saw the score inside the first 10 minutes and went, there you go. That's what you get when you don't play groove in the middle of the park away from home. That's what happens. But yeah, look, you're right. It is generalistic, but like, ultimately the defense is the best form of defense. Like, a good defense is the number one best form of defense. At times we've been overly exposed and we've gone forward too much, and especially at this point of the season where teams are not going to sit back and do low blocks. They're going to try and find ways of getting points that they need at this stage. So all of a sudden you're coming up against a different proposition in opposition. They're now coming at you. They're now looking at causing you problems. And when you've got Junior Firpo playing as a number 10 and Jayden Bogle overlapping him as a number 9, if I'm an opposition manager, I know exactly where the next ball is going. It's going straight into the corner flag where there's no fullback. And we've been caught with that a couple of times this year, where our centre backs have been isolated 1v1 because the fullback's not there, or the number 6 isn't sitting in front of them deep enough, and those cause problems as well. But again, for every mistake Daniel Farke makes in terms of his team selection or individual moments in the game, you could also argue he's probably won his equal amount of points by making decisions in certain games and changing things at certain points and picking certain teams. So it kind of swings in roundabouts.
I think that's fair. That's fair, definitely. Chris has said first 11 knackered, subs now unfit. Farke out. Chris is
I don't think they're unfit, but yeah, I get the point.
Chris, I'm not sure if you venture over to Jer's channel a lot, but Chris is always in here giving me the Farke out pretty much if I'm ever giving Farke any sort of plaudits, Chris is straight on my neck, Jer. So I've got to be careful. Here you says, on the contrary, 98 points. I've got us winning the league. You guys are awesome. Reach out with the comments. They are the ones watching. Thanks, mate. Yeah, Mark, maybe you should just be my admin guy. If we don't go up the fixtures left, then we'll be complete bottle jobs.
I hate that term.
You know why? Because it resonates with us, doesn't it?
I just never liked it as a player. I never liked it. I just think the word bottle job just makes it very easy. Like, it's like, oh, they bottled it. It's slightly more complicated than that.
Do you know what it is as well, Joe? When I look back to last season, I look at that QPR game when we lost 4-0, and that game in particular, I didn't think they turned up. I thought QPR were way more up for it when we had so much to fight for. I think in that game in particular, Leeds bottled it, but that's specific to that game. Whereas when you look at the generalisation, like we keep talking about, of the season, you had a runaway train in Ipswich who are run so well. They've got an exquisite manager. And then you've got two teams who haven't been, context to this last season, two teams that hadn't been in the Championship for the best part of 10 years and had won the league, won the FA Cup, been in Europe in the time they were in the Premier League. So calling that a bottle job as a sort of general stance, you do look back on that now and you think, yeah, that term couldn't really be applied to that. Maybe certain games you look at it and think they didn't turn up there, they bottled that game. But as a general focus, it's quite difficult to say last season we bottled it with what we're up against.
Well, yeah, and I think you've got to look at the context of the start of the season as well, and last summer and what was going on at the club last summer. We started the season a month and a half later than everybody else behind the scenes, so that has an impact. We had a new manager, we had a takeover, we were late with our players, which now appears to just be our strategy on signing players is wait till the last week and do it all then, which we won't be able to do next year, else we'll be relegated before we even go up, before we get going. But I think if you look at last season, there's more content, and the context always gets lost, but the context of it is Leeds were chasing two sides all season and they had to win every single game to try and close. We were 17 points behind Leicester at one stage and went ahead of them. And there's got to be a fatigue factor in that as well, of having to go so hard for so long. At some point, you're just going to hit a wall and just drop. And for me, we hit the wall against QPR. So I never liked that term bottle job. I didn't feel it was a bottle job. I just felt Leeds hit a wall at that point and they chased for as long as they could possibly chase and they had nothing left and they ran out of steam. And again, some of that does sit with the manager because he played the same 11 players for so many games for so long. It was inevitable they were going to get tired when other teams are rotating players around the bigger squads or whatever else. So there's that extra context to it. And I'm never as personally as arrogant to say to a professional footballer, think you bottled that, knowing full well if I stepped into it, you wouldn't be able to even get on the park, let alone do anything on a game. So yeah.
Yeah, they couldn't do what we do, though, Joe. Always remember that, mate.
They don't talk about it.
No, it is interesting. I mean, you were talking a little bit about when the Leeds fullbacks are bombing on. You've got Firpo and Bogle. I honestly, Joe, Bogle is he could be my favourite player right now. I absolutely love Jayden Bogle. I love the fact we got him £5 million from Sheffield United. I love the fact it narked Wilder off so much.
Underwhelming summer we had.
Underwhelming summer.
Bogle.
Yeah, exactly. That's another chat. Don't let me forget. I'm going back to the transfer window. We need to get Joe's thoughts on that. But I wanted to just talk about maybe the key performers this season, and I'm a massive fan of Pascal Struijk. I think he's such a superb defender. I think he can make that step up again. I think he'll be much improved. I think there's a general look ahead at this championship campaign right now. Maybe Esteve, Rodon and Struijk, maybe the top three defenders. You can put CJ Egan-Riley up there as well, who's been so good for Burnley. Anel as well at Sheffield United's been another good one. But one I wanted to specifically focus on, because you were talking about the fullbacks bombing on and the recovery and the covering rate of the centre-backs in particular. I think Joe Rodon has started to read the game so nicely. He's built up from the back under pressure. Maybe aside from Adam Armstrong against West Bromwich Albion, where I thought he was a little bit wayward, aside from that game, he's been absolutely excellent at building up from the back. Just talk to me about Joe Rodon this season, mate, and how impressed maybe you've been with him.
I got stick at the start of the season, as I did last year. I think I put a tweet out last year. I said Glenn Kamara is an average midfielder before the ball was even kicked. And I got dogs abuse for that. But he's in Saudi Arabia now, so maybe I wasn't wrong. But then you've got Joe Rodon this year. I put a picture of him up with the first day of the season and went, this is your player of the season. That's how confident I was.
Really?
I love him. Yeah. For me, he's exactly what you want from a Leeds player. He's what we all want to see in an all-white kit, is that someone is just going to run through a brick wall for you. And I think he does that. He puts his body on the line. He always looks like he's about 20 seconds away from breaking down crying because of what's going on the pitch. But the Welsh Panda, as he was nicknamed at one point as well, because he always look. You've got Pascal Struijk beside him in this pristine white kit, tucked in, tidy, hair's all perfect. And then you've got Joe Rodon beside him, whose arms hanging off, is covered in mud, his eyes hanging in the socket, and he's like, give me the ball. So they're very different kind of players. They complement each other.
Pascal's almost perfect hairdo, and then Jones is everywhere. He's just dragging it back.
Do you remember the kid that used to get muck on his jersey to go home and tell his mum he played? That Joe Rodon walks off the park every week and go, "Look, man, I played." Whereas Pascal Struijk walks off like, "Did you even get on the pitch?" It's like
Kez vibes, isn't it?
Yeah. It's what they bring though. They complement each other quite well, and they're both very good at coming out from the back with the ball and starting moves. And I think that's really important. And they both have that tempo as well. like Ethan Ampadu is fantastic at reading the game, but Ethan Ampadu likes to hold on to the ball a little bit too long for me. He likes to, slow it down and have a good look at what he's doing. If you look at Joe Rodon and Pascal Struijk, they're both trying to figure out where their next pass is as they're sprinting out from the back. They're like, I don't care, we're going. And when I get there, I'll figure it out. Whereas Ethan is more of a kind of I'll figure out my path first and then I'll go into it. So I think they complement each other quite well. Joe Rodon reads the game so well. His last ditch tackles are excellent, which goes to that as well. Pascal needs to get a little bit better at his 1v1 mark, and he gets rolled a little bit too often for me, especially when he's isolated. But I think there's a Rolls Royce of a centre back in there. I think he's tidy on the football. He can read the game quite well. I like him as a captain as well. I think he suits it for me. There's still growth in Pascal as well. I think he's not nowhere near his prime yet or his peak. I think he's doing the right things about getting better and better. So yeah, both are very good. Joe Rodon been a fantastic signing. I think we all thought 10 million was probably a little bit too much for a centre back in the Championship, but I think if you look at what he's done for us over 2 seasons, he's easily paid that money back. And if we get promoted, he's justified in the decision that he made to come here as well. But also the fact that he decided to do the kick photographs last Christmas, knowing full well he wasn't going to be here this season, tells you where his head was at. And I'm all here for that. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, this is, and I guess this is more like of an end of season chat, but I don't want to kind of like veer into arrogance here, Leeds fan arrogance again. But you just made me think there when it came to Joe Rodon in terms of that step up, obviously bringing him in from Tottenham Hotspur, 10 million quid, Swansea graduate who was signed by Tottenham for, as a Premier League defender. How many of this team do you think right now, Joe, do make that step up? I've been asked this question a lot. And I think it's once again, context has to be applied again. We're flying high. We're doing really well at the minute. That leap up is so gargantuan. It's terrifying now. I think from even when we were last there, it's gone up a level or two. How many of them do you think can make that step up? Or do you think it's just a case of investing in a mass amount of players in the summer?
I think a mass amount of players would be a mistake.
Okay.
Look at Nottingham Forest first season in the Premier League, they brought in 2 squads essentially, and it didn't work. They just about survived. And if we had had our house together, they probably would have gone down and we would have stayed up. Like it's an interesting one. I think a large amount of money will need to be spent, but I think it needs to be spent on quality, not quantity. I think Leeds probably need to go and buy a Premier League spine, goalkeeper, centre-back, 6, maybe an 8, 10, 9, right down the middle of the park. And then I think we've got enough young, exciting players who can develop around that are only going, like the likes of Ramazani and Gnonto. They're only young players. They're only going to get better, Ethan Ampadu in the middle of the park, again, for as long as he's been around, he's still a relatively young enough footballer, so he has still got room and potential to grow as well. But we've got to get this right. I think the step up is interesting, and I think the next 8 games will dictate what this team is going to do next season, or what Leeds will do in the summer. If these players that are in this Leeds squad right now believe the Premier League quality and Premier League level, which you would hope that the belief is in them, that they can do that, then they've got to show it in the next 8 games that they can actually handle pressure and go and put some numbers on some boards and get this team promoted automatically. If they do that, then I think an awful lot of them can turn around and say, well, we've earned the right to have a crack at this in the Premier League. And then just, again, some smart buying in some key positions, get that spine right. But if they don't, if they limp over the line, I think you're going into a summer where you're looking at probably replacing a large chunk of the starting 11 outside of maybe your centre-backs, or they'll be thereabouts. I agree with you on bringing another centre-back. Alvedi for me would be a smashing one to bring in as well from Gladbach. So you're adding that top-level quality to there. Again, a box-to-box 8 that can score you goals in the Premier League is proven quality. Not easy to get, but that's what you need. A creative number 10 and a goal-scoring number 9, an out-and-out number 9 goal scorer, which, again, everyone and their mother wants a goal scorer number 9, but they can't. No one's getting them. So look at Arsenal for the last 10 years; they haven't been able to get one. Yeah. So that's what's needed. But if they can get over, I think you look at Tanaka. I think he's made for the Premier League. I think how he operates in tight spaces, I think he'll get a little bit more space in the Premier League. And I think you'll see exactly what he's capable of doing. He seems to handle pressure really, really easily. Yeah. Like he goes into these situations and sits the left-hand side of the park where it's really congested, goes in, gets the ball, a couple of passes, and he's out with it and cool as a cucumber. So I think he's capable of doing it. I think Dan James, I think he's proven that he's fixed his end product and he can now have a proper crack in the Premier League. I like him. Aronson as a squad player, but I would definitely bring in a first choice number 10, a more creative number 10 in that position. Then you can use Aronson's legs off the bench when you need him. But that's probably about it. really, being honest. Like, I think the rest of them are very good as part of a bigger squad, like a Leeds squad. I wouldn't have any issue with bringing them off the bench. But I think Leeds will need to invest in some proven quality, and we'll have to flex some muscles. And I think 200 million spend in the summer wouldn't be outside the reach. I think that's what everyone is saying. But I mean, you're probably looking at spending 75 of that on 2 players if you're being realistic, and then hope that they're the right level of player you're bringing in. Because the criticism against Leeds was the last time we were in the Premier League, we were shopping in the 10 to 20 million pound bracket. For Leeds to move on, they needed to be shopping in the 30 to 45 million pound bracket, and they couldn't. So we go to the stage
to be honest, Joe, I still have shivers at that second transfer window when the full window was it Klaassen, Firpo, and was it Dan James that was brought in? Rough. Yeah. In the Premier League. Dan says, great to see 2 most common sense Leeds channels together. I'm not sure about me, maybe Joe, but thanks so much for that, mate. OIB says, about time you lads got together. Can imagine this been a great chat. I think Farke wanted additions in January, but wasn't backed. Whoever the casting vote was taking a massive gamble. Right, Mr. Lynch. I want to get your perspective, mate. I want you to tell me if they got it right. And this look we'll only know at the end of the season, mate, of course. And that's the gamble, of course.
It's a horrible question.
It is, mate. It's a rank question. I'll give you my perspective, and maybe I was sort of on a lonely island with this one. I thought that the recruitment in the summer was excellent. I thought it was very, very good. I thought from the first part of the season, we had a lot of people saying that we had the best squad in the division. We had the most depth in the division. And across really all members of the parks, I think at that point, Verba was kind of in and out as well, but Ampadu was fit as obviously centre-back cover. And even Darlow for Meslier. Look, I know there's a bit of a conversation there, but I guess that comes down to manager selection when it comes to sticking with Meslier, even in the tough moments. Bogle, Schmidt, Byron, and then on the other side, sort of something similar, Firpo, Byron. And then, going forward, obviously we had an abundance of quality. You can look at the number 9, of course, I understand that. I have maybe a little bit more faith, as I'm sure you're well aware, in Joseph and what he can bring to proceedings in certain games. I thought the QPR game for him was perfect with the amount of balls that we're putting in the box, and Perot is just hanging back, which he does, and he does to excellent effect sometimes. But just that marksman on the end of things, I felt it was maybe a game and a point where the manager should have put Joseph in. Overarching point here again, mate. I thought we had enough. And I thought it was up to the other teams to invest, aka, your Sheffield Uniteds with Harry Suter going under and a couple of other injuries in their squad, which meant that they had to go out and really buy. Burnley obviously brought in Marcus Edwards, and Sunderland with Enzo Lefebvre, which I thought were the stunning transfers of the window, really. But, if Leeds had gone and signed Gnonto and Ramzani in January, everyone would have gone, wow, incredible signings as well. So that's kind of where I was at going into it, mate. So I've never really subscribed to the notion that we had to do business in January, but I do understand that it gives you that assurance, and to an extent, maybe are they gambling with it?
Yeah, I think a gamble is a fair assessment of it, because you don't know what's going to happen on the back of it. But again, I got stick for saying that this wasn't the best squad in the league after 14 games when we were sitting 4th in the table. I said that, no, well, we're not top of the league, so that's not the best team. And I got stick for that. And then lo and behold, the transfer window closes a month and a half later, and it's, we're not the best squad in the league anymore. I was like, what changed? Did we sell anybody? No.
What happened? I saw a lot of the same, yeah.
So you're like, you're the best or you're not. Like, and I think they always say that if you're spending much money in January, it's because you're panicking. And I think if you look at Sheffield United, they didn't have a summer window because of their ownership model. They got a new owner. They had money to spend. They were always going to spend it in January instead. The Enzo Lefebvre signing for Sunderland, was a fantastic signing. But then he got injured and he missed 8 weeks. So ultimately, didn't benefit them at all.
Also meant a horrendous injury record as well, by the way. Awful injury record.
And you're walking into that with your eyes wide open, knowing he's got a bad injury record, and lo and behold, he gets an injury. So again, we all kind of drooled over Lefebvre signing him. I know I did anyway. I thought that's a fantastic signing. But had we signed him and then he got injured, you'd have people saying to you, he got a horrendous injury record. And we knew that coming into this. Why did we sign a player with a bad injury record? So you're you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And it always depends on what the outcome looks like. We won't know until the end of the season is the honest answer about this, whether it was a good gamble or not. But if they do get up, it might have been a smart thing from an FFP perspective to try and hold back the money a little bit and then have that money in the summer to go and spend, instead of getting players that might get you to the Premier League, but might not. But then they might not be at that level and you got to rebuy again next year. You've kept that money back for a summer where you know where you're going to be and what you need to bring in. And if we don't get promoted, not spending in January might give us a little bit more of a buffer from an FFP perspective to not have to sell everybody in the club in the summer, which is the concern this year. So you've got that. The Meslier one was interesting because obviously Farke was offered a new goalkeeper after Hull. That's the rumor. That the club said we'd give you another goalkeeper, and he backed his goalkeeper. That is the manager's prerogative. He's the manager. He's not the head coach.
Yeah.
Big difference in the two roles. And he spends a lot of time explaining to us that he's the manager of the club. So he's in the weeds. So he's making decisions on this as well. So if they went to him with players and he didn't like them, he said no to them. Could he get the players that he wanted? No. Was he happy enough with the squad that he had then? It looks like he is, because he stopped talking about the number 10 pretty quickly as January went on. He started talking about it less and less and less. But he made one clear point: unless they're going to make the 11 better, there's no point in bringing anybody in to sit on the bench and cause problems. Was anybody going to get in ahead of Dan James and Manor Solomon in January, the run that they were on at that point, the numbers they were clocking up? I don't think so. And then you've Ramazani in reserve and you've Gnonto in reserve. Did we need Marcus Edwards? It's nice to have him, but we didn't need Robbie Fowler in the Premier League when we bought him, but we did. There you go. So, you don't. It's nice to have all these things, but what are you going to do with all your shiny toys now that you've got them in your toy box? Where are they all going to go? You can't play with them all at the same time. So there's decisions to be made. I would have loved to have seen Leeds go and getting another centre back. I would have loved to have seen Leeds go and got a number 9. I would have loved that. They didn't. So again, it comes back to, well, is the squad good enough at that point? Yeah. And in the run they went on afterwards, absolutely the squad was more than capable of doing it. And I still think that this squad is more than capable of getting promoted automatically. And I don't think that changes because of a transfer window where we sat on our hands. But I think Leeds need to start looking at that January window a little bit more forensically and stop just saying it's a bad window to do business in. Sometimes you're going to have to do business in that window.
Yeah, I think I'm not a massive fan of. I do understand where they're coming from. I mean, this one in particular, for me, stands a little bit on its own because of the recruitment in the summer window in terms of them. And I know that have gone on this stance again, and we know what it's like, when they come out and say it's an opportunistic market. And I understand that with the sort of recruitment we did in the summer, because you kind of see a stunning signing become available at centre back or maybe in net, and you think, wow, we'll go for that. But we're sort of propped up by what we've done in the summer. But I do agree. I think a lot of the time we have a little bit of arrogance in January, and that's me saying that, not you, mate. I do think we have that, and I think Leeds sometimes think that they're what doesn't smell. So it would be quite nice for us to be a little bit more proactive in that month, especially when it comes to the Premier League. I mean, my goodness, mate, we're gonna have to carry on. But once again, that brings with it its own problems. If a player goes down in the Premier League and then Leeds need to invest, teams know that Leeds need to invest, and we're a Premier League club then, so they ask for X, Y, and Z when it comes to money and when it comes to bonuses and all that sort of stuff. So once again, this is a very context-based chat. But I think for me, Joe, it comes down to need and want. Did Leeds need investment? I would have said no. Yeah, if you'd have offered me a goalkeeper replacement for the man who I'm not a massive fan of in there, I would have snapped your hands off. But once again, did he have the option there in Carl Darlow? That's maybe a different conversation. But
the arrogance is interesting because it's arrogance or confidence depending on what side of the fence you're on. So Leeds, from Leeds' perspective and Farke's perspective, he might have said, I've got confidence in this group of players. I don't need to bring anybody else in. But from the fan base perspective, you could probably go, it's probably a bit arrogant to say that. You could probably do it one or two more, And I think what I said at the time was, learn the lessons of the past and don't leave an open goal. Like if there's a chance to fill a gap, and a centre back was the worry for me, because as much as James Ceballos is a prospect and is sitting on the bench for Leeds this year, he was never going to start games for Leeds United. So he's not an option at centre-back for Leeds off the bench. If they've got injuries, it's going to be Sam Byron playing right centre-back, or somebody else going in there, or Ampadu or whoever. It was never going to be Ceballos. So for me at that point, I would have liked to have seen Leeds got another centre-back just to have that cover in case Joe Rodon went down, in case Pascal Struijk went down again, and Ethan Ampadu's been injured twice this season. So having that extra body there for me would have been smart to do. We'll know more in 8 weeks' time or 8 games' time whether Leeds made the right decision or not to leave that goal open. But for me, I would have liked to have seen them do 2. Didn't do any. and we should still have enough. We'll find out.
We'll find out, mate. Mark says, match on together. I can't be a moderator. I like to use bad words. Okay. Joe should have been captain. Welsh Warrior, indeed. Barry says, incredible to see Conor and Jer together. What a time to be alive. There you go, mate. Providing content that makes you happy to be alive. Wow. What people we are. Max Wobbler should start when healthy. Am I wrong? Calling him Max Wobbler doesn't give me that much confidence, to be honest, Mark.
Backhanded compliment, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think you're great. You should play Wobbler.
Yeah, exactly. But it is an interesting conversation when it comes to that January market, because I know that massively split a lot of the fan base. To be honest, I mean, I took pelters throughout the window, to be honest, by saying, because I couldn't say it was the best squad in the division. I couldn't say it was the best squad in the division, which I was going on other channels, rival fan channels. We were doing so well up until that point, and obviously still are. But I couldn't go on and talk about the depth and the caliber of the squad, and then go into the window and say we need 4 or 5 bodies. It wouldn't have made any sense, really. So. Right, okay, Gio, let's have a look at the promotion push then, and let's have a look at the remaining games. Who are the tough ones for you? I mean, I've kind of earmarked, weirdly, and it's probably quite Leedsy, I've earmarked the Luton one for some odd reason as probably the most difficult, which I'm trying to get my head around, to be honest. I don't know why I think that. It's just a feeling, that Leeds feeling we kind of all get. Borough, I think it'll be tough. I could see us dropping points there, but I can't see us losing the game. Where do you stand on it, mate, with the running?
I'm in a similar enough position in terms of the Leedsy bit in the back of my head talking to me like I'm looking at the games. I think the first one after international break is always a tricky one for Leeds. Daniel Farke has had that. How do you do? Daniel Farke has had that line that he used to use. He stopped using it, but he used to use that line of, well, it's the players just come back after international break, so it's not an ideal situation. We're like, oh, we're just going to write this game off, then are we? And then just move on. Like, we can't do that anymore. So, yeah. But I do think the Swansea game will be a tricky one, but I'm glad that that's in Ellen Road straight off the bat. Luton, it's at home for them. They've been awful this season, but they don't need to be awful against Leeds. They just turn up once and they can do something. Borough, shown this year that they can pick us off if we leave gaps. So we've got to be mindful of that as well, although we did make changes against them in the cup. But Oxford away is the one where I'm like, that's the one that's bothering me a little bit, because on paper it's a shoe-in. It should be a win, but it's away from home. It might be a little bit more uncomfortable. So yeah, Oxford is the one for me. I think it was a banana skin. It's that one.
Jerry as well. Rowett's done a really good job at home as well. I think he got a point. I think he got a point against Burnley as well at home. So he's not done a bad job.
No, and they're on a well, where are they at the moment? They're not on a good run, actually, 1 win and 6. But sure, look, that doesn't mean anything when they play Leeds. Form goes out the window. But yeah, I that's the one. But again, if you look at, I mean, this is all on paper, and that means whatever it means because it's not played in that paper. But if you look at the run in, we have Swansea or 16th, lower half of the table. You've got Luton, second bottom, Plymouth, bottom, Stoke. No, we don't have Stoke. Sorry, Oxford, 18th. Preston, 14th. Then you got Bristol City in 7th. So outside of Bristol City, every single other side is in the bottom half of the table. You win the 4 away games. Sorry, you win the 4 home games and pick up points in your home games, and you should be, again, mathematically, you should be up. But it should be that straightforward. You look at Burnley and Coventry, they've got to play each other, so someone's dropping points there. They both, not Coventry, Burnley and Sheffield United play each other. They're both dropping points. They both have to play Coventry. The potential drop points there as well. And I don't think this is going to be a clear run for any team all the way through to the end. I don't think you're going to see Leeds, Burnley and Sheffield United win every single game back-to-back and just shoot this out for their final 100 metres at a sprint. Teams are going to drop points. We're probably going to drop points. They're going to drop points as well. So, again, who drops the most amount of points? We think on paper we've got the easier running. We just got to go and do the job. And that's
I'm sick of doing it. Joe, I'm sick of doing this. I'm sick of doing it. It just feels like my life being a Leeds United fan. When we were in obscurity, when we were just nothing, you kind of didn't have those feels, and you kind of want the feels in football. Of course you do. That's what you want, and that's why we love this club. But my goodness, it's the trials and tribulations of supporting this club, the anxiousness constantly, and it'll be here with us next season as well. Regardless, it's what it's about. But
the reason why we're all called long-suffering Leeds fans.
Yeah, I mean, from a period of Sunderland and Sheffield United, when I mean, such impressive wins and very un-Leedsy, to then, I guess, face West Bromwich Albion, Portsmouth and QPR and stumble. It's I mean, that is Leedsy, isn't it? It's so Leedsy.
This is the way.
Yeah, it really is. It really is indeed. Mark as well, mate. We've just spoken about that, buddy. If you just want to go back about 10 minutes, but cheers for your donation, bud. Darren's in the building. Presume it's Darren. Question, lads. What would you do about Meslier if we go up? Well, there is a short answer from me, of which I'm sure you're well aware, Daz. If we stay in this division, I would be getting rid, if you can. Look, we have got Mr. Context on with us today, which is a rational way of thinking, of course. Leeds would have to get the right money for him, of course. His stock needs to be high for us to get the right money for him, of course. And he's on a decent contract, isn't he? So
I'd sell him.
Yeah.
I don't even care about the money.
Just get rid.
And I backed him last year quite a lot. I did back him. I still think there's a very good goalkeeper in Meslier. I think as he gets older, he's going to mature. We ran Marco Silvestri out of the club, and he ended up having a pretty decent career for himself in Serie A. So even got an Italian call up. So I think long term there's a goalkeeper in there. I think he's going to have a really good career. I think he will be a top goalkeeper. I just don't think Leeds have the luxury of being able to wait for that. I think if Leeds go to the Premier League, they need a comfortable, confident, calming influence in the back of the net. We don't need to be worrying about, like, I don't want to see the ball being back passed to Meslier in the last 10 minutes of a game, because part of me just goes, I just don't want it to be you. I don't want it to be a mistake and someone say, look, it's Meslier again. I want get rid of that. And the only way to get rid of that is to possibly look at getting a different option. So I would be buying I think it's a very important position. I think Leeds need to go and get someone who's very capable of playing in that position in the league.
Yeah. And as well, Hal, as you said, Mez is in the last year of his contracts in the summer. Leeds. I was thinking this in January, I believe it was, when I was saying, look, you've kind of got a player right now. There's only a few windows now where we can get good value for him, and it's that, or you're going to kind of get a player running down his contract. So, it's a really important period for the club. I think there's definitely some belief in there. I mean, every single manager's kept him in, barring Sam Allardyce, who obviously switched him for Rob Les. I'll be honest, Jer, I'm not sure he'd be a top keeper. I just kind of look at him, mate, and I just think, at what level would this guy play? There's so many parts of his game. I'm not a goalkeeper coach at all, but I just look at him and I think the panic stations he's put, I think, multiple Leeds United defences in. It's just something which I don't know, is that just part of his game? Is he always just going to be a little bit anxious when the ball's put on him in the box? He's constantly looking to punch instead of collect, like your Michael Coopers and your James Trafford.
I think that's an instruction, though, to be honest with you, because I look back at Robles and I look back when Klassen came in for a couple of games, they all punched. Every one of them punched. None of them caught the ball. And I think that's possibly an instruction from the goalkeeping coach. If we don't want you to take a chance of catching the ball, just get rid of it. Whether that's the right thing or not.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I hadn't thought of it like that. I mean, if that is an instruction, I guess it's interesting. Maybe it's just keeping the ball in play, keeping the ball moving. If you punch it, I guess there's more license for a counter attack if we're able to get the ball sort of, move and sort of quickly move the ball in transition potentially. Yeah, you're probably right. And at least then you're getting it away from obscurity quickly and maybe not looking to fumble it, and not be looking to fumble it, but the pressure.
We saw him try and catch a ball against Hull, didn't we?
God.
I bet you wish he punched that one.
Man, he's really regressed, hasn't he? I think I think since the sort of early Bielsa days, we've seen a real regression in him. I think Pascal, since Bielsa stumbled a little bit, but I think as the overall package, I think he's developed. I think, but Meslier is the one who I kind of look at, Jer, and he needs a move for himself as well, doesn't he, mate? I
think so as well, yeah. And this isn't a personal attack on Meslier. How do I put this? I don't think no goalkeeper goes into any game with the intention of making a mistake. I think he's tried his best for Leeds over the years. I think he's tried to do his best. I think he's been at Leeds at a point where there's been incredible flux in what's gone on around the place, and 3 managers in the Premier League season, and the moving from Marcelo, who wanted him to get the ball and dink it wide and get balls into the channels, to Jesse, who didn't like wingers at all, so you can't go wide anymore, so it has to be more central, so you got to change how you've been playing for the last 3 years. Then he comes out of the team under Sam, He goes in with Robles and he comes back into the team last year. And arguably last year, he had some massive moments for Leeds. I think the saves he made in both games against Leicester were huge moments in those games. And he's a moments goalkeeper for me. He has big, big moments where he makes big saves. The save against QPR doesn't get enough credit for the point blank save in the second half that he makes in that game that keeps Leeds in the tie. Doesn't get enough credit for those kind of ones as well. But then he has those moments in him where it's a lapse in concentration, or, you know, he lets a ball bounce in the box when, Jesus, you're told your entire career, don't let it bounce. You know, but he lets it bounce against Sunderland. It takes a skip and it goes in behind him at the back of the net. Ball against Hull, you're always told, clear your lines, make sure of it, just tip it over the crossbar, tries to catch it, tries to be too clever, concedes. And it's those kind of things where you just don't need them around the place, because, as you say, they make the defense a little bit jittery around you. You saw Joe Rodon standing over him saying, not again, which is just the worst thing you can hear from a player. So it's not a personal attack. He's had very, very big moments for Leeds, and he does deserve credit for some things that he's done. But equally, and I always say this, praise and criticism in equal measure when deserved. I'm not afraid to say a player's played well, whether I like them or not. I'm not afraid to say a player's played badly, whether I like him or not. It's the same thing. It's if it's merited and it's done the right way and it's genuine criticism more so than abuse, no problem. But I think for me, there's just too much of both sides of it. And I would rather Leeds just have a goalkeeper that we don't have to worry about and don't talk about. Like, we don't talk about Joe Rodon this season because he hasn't done anything that we need to focus on. He's just got on with his game and he's played his game well. And we need that from a goalkeeper. I don't think Leeds need to go into any more years talking about the goalkeeper. I think they just need to sort it out. But historically, we've never had brilliant goalkeepers. Like, even John Lukic in his best days, he punched the ball in the back of the net against Rangers. I remember watching that game. He had moments. Gary Sprake had moments back in the day as well. He's known for throwing the ball into his own net. You know, so Nigel Martin was the exception to the rule. When we love Nigel Martin.
Well, it's recently, isn't it? Yeah, Nigel Martin, obviously, but and Robbo to an extent. But I guess the one recently is Rob Green, isn't it? And that's it, really. Solid, in the past, however, steady Eddie. Yeah. I'm going to ruin your Friday night now. Are you ready?
Thanks for that.
Yeah, I just wanted to get this on now, but obviously context applied. You know, we have to just take a step back. Willie Gnonto was limped off seconds before the break. Italy under-21s game against Netherlands went down around the 40th minute trying to challenge for the ball, stayed down and had treatment but failed to run it off, replaced in the 45th. Good Lord.
Third place, isn't it? Third place. There we go. Sorted.
Oh, well, at least we know. Hopefully we'll be back for the playoffs.
Let's hope playoffs. Maybe he did it deliberately.
Yeah, maybe he did. Maybe he just wanted to come off. I mean,
he did before, and then he got in trouble for picking his phone up on the bench because the Leeds medical team had rang him to say, "Are you okay?" And he put his phone down. I hope it's nothing.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, fingers crossed. And then you'll have me coming on here going, Ramazan, he's always been the number 10 option.
That's my new narrative.
That's the narrative, yeah, that's it. No, mate, but I'll tell you what, Joe, we'll leave it there, mate. It's racking onto the hour, and it's been an absolute pleasure, my friend. Guys, I'm really happy you've all enjoyed it. This man needed to come on the channel for a long time now, and it's great that we've eventually linked up. I know there's a lot of people saying you'd like it to be a regular thing. Maybe we could have a conversation about that if you guys are interested in it. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Joe, thank you, my friend. I really appreciate you coming on, and I hope you've enjoyed it.
Thanks very much for having me on. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Well, anytime, mate. Anytime you fancy coming on again. But guys, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the other side.